In the new version of Blender, we know that the bloom options have been removed, so in this tutorial we'll learn how to create a bloom effect like this. It's quite easy, and it works for both Eevee and Cycles, and we'll also share a free add-on for everyone to add bloom in just one click. So without bloom, your lights will look like this, and with bloom it will look like this, with a nice glow around the lights. But before we add bloom, remember that this effect works only for lights, so either have some light objects in your scene, or you must have an emission shader. For our table lamp, we have created a material with an emission shader. The strength is set as 2, but you can increase it for more light, as per the requirement of your scene, and the same goes for the strength of your light objects as well. Then in the render properties, we'll disable ray tracing for a faster viewport, and we'll split the screen into half, as we need to build the bloom setup in the Compositor. So let's open the Compositor in the bottom half, and you should first enable this Use Nodes option. You'll get these two nodes by default, one is the rendered output, and another is our final processed output. Now go to the Add menu, and under Filter, let's take a node called Glare, and place it in between these two nodes. Then in the Glare node, we should change the glare type to Bloom. To see the effect of this setup, we need to first switch over to the rendered view mode, and then from this drop-down, we have to enable the option to display the Compositor output in the viewport. So we get our bloom effect for the table lamp, and we can control the bloom amount as per our requirement, by changing this size field in the glare node, maybe to 6. You can also use this threshold field to include more light, or maybe to exclude some low light conditions in your scene. So this is the basic setup to create a bloom. It works both in Eevee as well as in Cycles, but we'll improve it further. If you look closely, you'll notice that these edges are very sharp and the bloom looks a bit unreal. It will look better if we can add some blur to these edges. It's more evident for an actual light object, like we can see the bloom effect without blur, and then it is bloom with a blur, which looks far better. So in order to add a blur to our table lamp, we'll again go to the Add menu, then under the Filter group, under this Blur group, we'll pick up a simple blur node, and place it right before the glare node. Then in this blur node, we can increase these XY values, maybe to say 10. We can see it in real time, and now it looks better, because of the blur effect added to its edges, and it looks real for any bright source of light. But this also has a big problem, because this type of blur will affect the entire scene, so all other objects in the scene will also get blurred. We need to somehow exclude these objects, keeping only our target objects or the source of light in the blur. In order to do so, first go to this View Layer tab, and scroll down to Passes. Under the section called Cryptomatte, we have to enable this option called Object. Then we'll again go back to our nodes setup in the Compositor. We need to separate out the target object for the blur, so between these two nodes, we have to add some kind of mask to filter it out. So let's again go to the Add menu, and from Mask, we'll add a node called Cryptomatte, and place it just before the blur. Please note that we cannot use these crypto things, they are present here for the legacy purpose. We need to connect this image output to the image input of our Cryptomatte node. And here we have to type down the name of the object that we want to blur in our scene. But since we are using a render pass, we won't be able to see it real time in the viewport, so let's go to the solid view mode, so that we can see our objects. The name of this object is my lamp, so we have to type down this exact same name in the matte ID field. And if we have to blur multiple such objects, we can enter all those names separated by a comma. Now we need to add few more nodes here, to get a node tree like this. Here, we are mixing the output of the blur node, with the original render layer output, using this mix color node, and the FAC factor of this node is driven by this multiply node. We are multiplying the output of the blur node, with a high number in this node, and we must clamp its output. Then we are taking this mix output through a glare node as usual, and you may be able to see this glare output in the rendered view mode. But the blur effect won't be visible here, it will show only in the render output. But before we render the scene, we notice that there is too much blur here, so we can take out some light from the blur effect by changing this threshold, maybe to 1.25. Then we'll again enable the ray tracing option here, and now if we go ahead and render this frame, we'll get a nice bloom effect, and this time, we can see the blur added to these edges, so it looks even more beautiful as a glowing light, but the blur did not affect any other objects present in the scene. We have even converted all these things into an add-on. Once you install this free add-on, you'll get a new menu option, called Quick Bloom. You can easily add a bloom effect from here, it will save a lot of your time, and the download link is given below in the video description. Now to test this add-on, we will take another scene, where we have added several such decorative light objects, and they are hanging from a wall. So the design of the scene is like this. Now we'll add a bloom effect using our add-on. We can change the input parameters for the bloom as we need. We can also add some amount of blur for these lights, and here we have to enter the object names, or we can simply enter the collection name that contains all our light objects. It saves our time. Then let's also select a bloom color, maybe light green, and we'll run this. Now we can see a bloom effect, and you can customize it inside the add-on. So I hope you like this tutorial, and I also hope that this add-on makes your life a bit easier, since Blender has removed the bloom option. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.